In looking for safe people, you may find yourself doing certain things that don't solve your problems, but actually add to them. Simply being active or busy is not enough. It's important to put energy into relationships in a way that is effective. If you find yourself always trying to fix others, doing all the work in a relationship, giving but refusing care, these are false solutions. Maybe you're just doing without and have given up on relationships because of disappointment and resignation. Dr. Townsend explains that you can be busy without actually being known, and how this leads to isolation.
Hi guys, we're on chapter 7 now, false solutions in the Safe People book of material, and Henry and I hope this is helpful material to you. We sure enjoyed writing this book, and we hear so many stories of people that say, goodness gracious, I had no idea how my people picker was, and this helped me to have a way to find the right people and make it healthy. Now, this chapter is about the false solutions that we initiate or take on that don't help us to find the right people. And it's going to kind of take you through a way of looking at what is it that's keeping me from picking the right people, because there's things we do to take up our time. In other words, all of us are problem-solving people. I mean, if you don't have a car, you'll find a way. Or, I don't know, if you live in Manhattan, you don't want a car, but if you have some problem, like I don't have a car, I don't have transportation, you're going to start thinking and going on web searches and asking friends and all this to get a car. The human race is a problem-solving race. The problem comes when we go after the wrong solution, and it takes up a lot of time and energy. Like the story I tell in Hiding from Love about the guy that he loses his keys to his car. And so a policeman comes up and sees this man walking around under a street lamp, desperately walking around. And the policeman says, "How can I help you, sir?" He says, "I lost my car keys." He said, "Well, that's horrible. Let me help you find them." He says, "Now, let's look at the big area. Well, where'd you lose them?" He said, "About 2 blocks down the road." And the policeman says, "Well, why are we looking here?" The man said, "Well, the light's better here." That's sort of what we do when we look for false solutions. We put energy into our relationships in the wrong way. So we're busy, but it's just activity. It's not really goal-oriented activity that'll get you to the right people. So we don't want you just to be active. Active is not enough. You got to have the right solutions. So let's go through. When we wrote the book, there were 7, but I think for our purposes, I want to go through the top 4 of those 7 and give you a taste of what you might be doing that's keeping you from finding the great people in your life, whether this is in the business world or friendship world or romantic world or whatever. Okay? Number 1 is doing the same. Doing the same is, psychologically, there's a term for it, is called repetition compulsion. And repetition compulsion is when I continue redoing dysfunctional or non-working patterns of behavior, especially in my relationships, over and over and over again. Case in point, suppose you're a gal and you're divorced, and you're kind of looking for the right guy, but the first guy you date, he's like a real mama's boy, and he's still like living in the attic of his parents' home, and the mom cooks for him and that sort of thing. You think, well, goodness gracious, I don't want that. So what happens then is you get out of that. But what you really liked about this guy was at least he was warm, and you felt maybe valuable because you could help him dress better, and you were supportive to him, and that nurturing part became out. So you liked the nurturing part, but you didn't like the kind of I won't grow up part. We have a tendency to continue going back into those old patterns. And the second guy you find is a mama's boy. And the third guy, by the way, I'm not being a gender basher here. I know lots of guys who are still with going after women that are daddy's girl or even mama's girl. So there's no bias here. And you find this pattern of I'm always finding irresponsible people, or I'm always finding dependent people who want to suck me dry, or I'm always finding really selfish people that want to make it about them, or I'm always finding, I don't know, ADD people who can't have a conversation. What is repetition compulsion about? Well, it's rooted basically underneath a fixing dynamic. There's something in me that thinks if I continue being nicer and more supportive and wiser and more helpful, I'll fix this person. It actually is rooted in childhood, where children grow up with parents that, none of my parents are perfect. So children think, well, the reason my dad's mad at me, or the reason my mom cries all the time, or the reason that they're impatient with me is me, because children are omnipotent. And so if I'm nicer, if I'm more entertaining, if I make good grades, if I'm ask how they are, I'll fix my parents. And so I keep putting my energy into being a better child, so they'll be better parents, and then they'll feed me and take care of me, I'll be safe. And we keep doing it. Problem is, it never works. Repetition compulsion, this kind of fixing thing, what it really is it's the idea that I actually have the power to change people that don't have any intent of changing. The Bible talks about it this way. It says that kind of a gross verse, but a very illustrative verse in Proverbs. It says the dog returns to his vomit. In fact, Peter quotes that. So you see the New Testament as well as the Old Testament. So it's pretty powerful. The dog returns to his vomit. We keep going back to dysfunctional patterns, thinking, if I just get it right this time. You got to break that and realize, this is not changing things. That's why I love 12-steppers. I mean, I love the 12-step movement. I love all their sayings. And one of them is, what's the definition of insanity? You probably know as well as I do. Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome. So don't do the same. If the people you're picking are the same, a different name and different age, but kind of the same inside, realize I can't keep fixing. I got to go a different way. Second one is doing too much. And doing too much, the reason that affects our relationships is because we begin slipping into what I call the 90-10 trap. And the 90-10 trap is because I'm a giver and I want to be a relational person and all this, I'll do 90% of the work in my relationship. I'll do all the calling. I'll come up with what we're going to do. I'll plan what restaurant we're going to do. I'll figure out the social calendar. I'm the one that'll say, when can you meet? And I'll basically kind of like take on all responsibilities of our relationship. When there's a problem and we're alienating, we're upset with each other, I'm the one that'll say, I want to work this out. There's nothing wrong with being active in a relationship. But when you're in the 90-10 trap, you know what we do sometimes? We train people to be passive. Let me say that again. When you're a 90-10er, you will train people to be passive. Because everybody's fundamentally lazy. I am a fundamentally lazy person. I mean, I get a lot done. I think I'm productive. But if I don't have other things driving me, I'd probably just sit around and, walk the dog or whatever. And so when you're around a person like you, think about what it's like to be a friend of a person like you. And that person's always saying, okay, and we can we'll go to a cultural event, and then we'll go to this church, and then we'll go jogging, and then we'll kind of read this book. You kind of think, God, they're taking care of everything. This is kind of cool. I don't have to call. They'll call me. I don't have to plan. I don't have to take energy. I don't have to solve problems. They'll solve them for me. So we create passivity and dependency in other people. And this is basically rooted on a control dynamic of thinking the only reason that I'm valuable is because I'm useful. Kind of a sad thing, really. The 90-10 trap is basically when you feel like nobody really wants me until I'm useful for them. If I'm doing all the work, then, they'll move toward me, as opposed to maybe they just like me. Maybe they like my personality and my character. Maybe they like the fact that I'm interesting or whatever. You need to find people who's willing to go 50-50. So when you do too much, it always backfires, and you build up just basically slugs in your life. You don't want to do that. Don't be a 90-10. I think we ought to be 60-40. I think 60-40 is good. Then I'm doing a little too much, and you're doing a little too much, and we end up having a great, very rich relationship. 50-50 is horrible. 50-50 is like, I did a little too much, so I'm going to wait on you. That's kind of like, I don't know, it's really the law. Do a little too much, but not 90. Number 3, when we do for others, and what I mean by that is I make it about giving and refusing care. I give care, but I refuse care. And this is when we tend to kind of be the person in the relationship who wants to be the listener and is interested in this sort of thing. But when people move toward them, they kind of change the subject and, let's don't make it about me. I have a friend, He's not a good friend, and I wish he were a good friend because he's a guy I know in my circles of life. I think he's a really good person, but he cannot receive anything from me. And I think I got to have a talk with him because I think it keeps us at a level C relationship, and I think he's a cool guy. He'd be a level A. But when I ask him, how are you doing? I'll say, how's work? He'll go, fine, how's your work? And I'll go, I can't say it yet because I'm kind of chicken. I want to say, is there an echo in this room? How's your work? I'd like for him to say, well, the struggles, ups and downs, the economy, here's how our cash flow is interesting. And then I'll tell him how my work is. Or I'll say, how's the family? My family's fine. How's your family? And I'm like, this is not what I want, because I don't know where he learned this. I don't know what course he went to or what kind of family he came from, but he doesn't allow me a chance to give back to him. And it's not working. I don't feel close to him. And if you're that kind of person, what's going to happen is that sick people will be attracted to you, but healthy people will go, well, this isn't two-way. Healthy people want a dialogue. Healthy people want to say, here's the challenges and here's the crummy things and how's yours? And after a great lunch or a great dinner, it's sort of like, gosh, let's talk again, because there's this people are designed for this mutual dialogue of the highs and the lows. And if all you're doing is giving, what you're going to get is people who have lots of psychological problems and lots of crises. And hey, I'm a psychologist. I know what that's like to have a lot of people like that, but I don't want that to be my whole life. So what does that mean? You've got to put yourself, and this is kind of scary, you've got to put your own needs in the relationship. That's what doing for others is about, or not doing too much, where you put your own needs in the conversation and say, that reminds me of something I'm dealing with. Now, there are some people who will go, well, that's great. Anybody about me, well, that's not a safe person. Some people go, gosh, I just kind of blabbed about myself. I'm sorry, how are you doing? That's fine. And then you got some people who are even more mature who will go, let me know how you're doing. But you've got to, and I use the word impose, you've got to impose your experience, impose your concerns, impose your highs and lows. People are not going to always ask you. So don't be afraid. The Bible says you don't have if you don't ask. You've got to impose what you need in the relationship. And the fourth thing that keeps there's a false solution, is doing without. And doing without's kind of a sad one, where I just sort of give up on the fact that I could ever have really cool relationships. And we sort of find a career, and we get busy, and we feel productive, and also we have, maybe we go to got a good hobby. Maybe I've got a great web design hobby, or maybe I really like some sport or some art thing or whatever. But it kind of isolated, and so we kind of realize we begin to come to this sort of resignation that relationships are not for me. I'm not talking about marriage here. I'm not talking about family here. I'm just talking about having people around who care about you. And when we do it without, it's basically a depressive position, because all of a sudden we've kind of given up that there's people who would really be interested in my life, really cool, interesting, caring people, and we just get busy. The problem with these false solutions is you can stay busy. You can stay busy till you're 80 years old and never be fully known. And I think it's not a good way to go through life, to realize by the time it's all over, I was busy, I'm a nice person, but nobody ever fully knew me. I want God to know me, but I want some people to know me too. My passions and my fears and my hurts and my sins and all that, I want to be fully known. And when you don't feel that can happen, you give up. Well, don't do that. Don't just get busy. Don't get working on the career and the hobbies. You get your needs met and find out other people. There's lots of people out there that want to know you. I know you might have had a lot of emotional train wrecks and say, well, my picker's not good. Well, you do these principles, but never, never, never do without. It's just like saying, I'll do without breathing. You can't do this. This won't be a good life for you. Here's some questions. What does it cost you to forge ahead and repeat your past? Well, gosh, it wasted 6 months, or I wasted 10 years. But it's kind of good sometimes to get a cost inventory of what did it cost me to keep picking the same wrong people over and over again. That'll help you to say, that's not worth it. I want to change. Secondly, how can you stop over-giving and letting the right people in? Now remember, that doesn't mean over-loving. You can't over-love. I mean, the Bible says in 1 John, God is love. There's no such thing as over-loving, but you can over-give. You can give out of sources that you don't have anymore and lose your bank account and your health and your energy. So how can you stop that so that you've got time for the right people? I think it's really helpful to calendar good relationships. I know I'm doing a lot of giving and serving and helping and crisis management. How many times a week am I having a phone call with really good people? In my leadership coaching programs, one of the things I require is they've got to have a certain amount of phone calls per month with each other, so they're giving each other grace. They don't have to talk about business problems, or they can, but they've just got to let each other in, because you got to get those antibiotics in. They've got to get those supplements in. You got to let the right people in. You got to calendar it and schedule it. And how can you come out of denial of the pain of isolation and deprivation? Well, you might not be in denial, and you might not be in isolation, but a lot of us are. What I would like you to do is to consider, have I given up? Have I decided that's really all there is staying busy and living in my head, living in my mind? Maybe there's more to it than that, okay? I believe there is. So I hope this is helpful for you. Stay with the true solutions. God's got great people for a great life for you. And we'll see you next time. Take care.